are, dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of Africa Today. We'll be shedding light about the economy between the African states, the different economic cooperation levels, and we'll be shedding light about the trade cooperation between the different African nations in our program today. But first, we'll take this report where the Foreign Ministry said Cairo supports the formation of an international quartet, including the US, the European Union, the UN, and the African Union to facilitate reaching a deal on filling and operation of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Sameh Sharif has more details.
His proposal to internationalize arbitration in a years-long dispute with Ethiopia over a massive dam Addis Ababa is building on the Blue Nile. The Foreign Ministry said Cairo backs the formation of an international quartet, including the US, the European Union, the UN, and the African Union, to facilitate reaching a deal on the filling and operation of the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam. The dispute centers on how much water Ethiopia will release downstream if a multi-year drought occurs and how the three countries would settle any future disputes. Cairo and Khartoum also call for a legally binding agreement on the dam's filling and operation, while Ethiopia insists on guidelines. Sameh Shoukry said Cairo wants to develop the negotiating mechanism to reach a legally binding agreement at the earliest possible opportunity. He announced the position during a meeting Wednesday in Cairo with Alphonse Ntumba Luaba, the coordination of Democratic Republic of the Congo's current leadership of the African Union. Sudan has announced its proposal earlier this year after AU-led talks failed to achieve progress. Since then, Khartoum has become vocal against Ethiopia's plans to start the second filling during the next rainy season. Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok said earlier this month that the dam threatens at least 20 million Sudanese, roughly half the country's population. Sudan wants Ethiopia to coordinate and share data on the dam's operation to avoid flooding and protect its own power-generating dams on the Blue Nile. The Blue Nile meets with the White Nile in central Sudan from where the Nile winds northward through Egypt and flows into the Mediterranean Sea.
A resurgence of the COVID-19 cases in hitting Somalia hard, straining one of the world's most fragile health systems. While officials await test results to show whether a more infectious variant of the pandemic is actually spreading there. More details in the following story.
In the lone COVID-19 isolation center in the Somali capital Mogadishu, 50 people have died in the past 2.5 weeks. 60 other patients admitted during the period have recovered. Martini Hospital officials said they believe this second wave is the new variant of the virus. They said that earlier, when 100 suspected patients were brought to quarantine, no more than 30 of them would be positive, but now almost all of them are infected. Somalia's virus infections have jumped from 4,784 to 6,549 this month alone, according to official data. Test results for the presence of one of the new variants are expected next month. Somalia, like most African countries, has yet to see a dose of a COVID-19 vaccine, though they also are expected to start arriving next month. Health officials say Somalia's current crisis around a delayed national election has contributed to the spread of COVID-19 as social distancing is ignored. The government has banned public gatherings, citing the pandemic, but opposition presidential candidates and other critics of President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed allege that the ban is instead meant to stifle their demonstrations, calling on the president to step aside.
The Confederation of the African Football gave the green light for Libya to host the international matches. Libya's national team and its clubs have been forced to host their matches in all other countries since a ban was imposed in 2013. More in the following story.
Libya has been given the green light to host international matches on its territory after the Emergency Committee of the African Confederation Football, CAF, lifted the restrictions on Friday. A statement on CAF's official website said the body has set 10th of March 2021 as deadline for Libya to comply with the CAF club licensing, safety and security requirements and to satisfy follow-up inspections on the stadium's suitability. The African football governing body said that the committee followed a safety, security and stadium inspection in both Tripoli and Benghazi from the 8th to the 15th of February 2021, as well as further deliberation on the situation in the country. Libya's national team and its clubs competing in African club competitions have been forced to host their matches in countries like Egypt, Mali and Tunisia since the ban was imposed. An initial restriction was imposed in 2011 during the unrestful period, then was lifted briefly in 2013 before being reimposed. Since its disputed elections in 2014, Libya has been split between competing political and military factions in the west and east of the country. CAF said in their statement on Friday that football matches will now return to Libya, beginning at Benghazi Stadium, subject to a number of conditions being met on stadium suitability to host CAF matches.
نحن لدينا مصير مشترك.
مصر تسلمت الرئاسة الدورية للاتحاد الإفريقي لعام 2019 وتتطلع كعادتها دوما للتعبير عن شواغل الشعوب الإفريقية الشقيقة الرامية لتحقيق الاستقرار والتقدم ودفع عجلة التنمية قدما. إذا كنتم ترغبون في تغيير وجه القارة الأفريقية فالاتحاد الإفريقي كقيادة تستطيع أن تعمل وتدرس بشكل مركزي لمشروع عملاق لبناء بنية أساسية على مستوى القارة. أنا أتصور أن الأمن والاستقرار استثمار. إذا لم تستقر هذه القارة والأمن فيها بمعدلاته عالية، هذا الأمر سينعكس بالسلب علينا كلنا.
Welcome back to shed more light about the Egyptian-African investment cooperation. We are very much delighted to have with us over the phone Mr. Raouf Ghaffar, our economic expert. Mr. Ghaffar, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, my dear. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ghaffar, how would you describe actually the prospects for the future of the AFCFTA under the coronavirus circumstances?
Well, the coronavirus is not lasting forever.
Yes.
And we have been, after our very strong comeback to the African continent, we have started a very clear policy to strengthen our ties with Africa,
yes,
to increase the bilateral trade between Egypt and all African countries. And of course, to reach that, Egypt has participated a lot in trying to establish peace and security and stability all over the hot areas in Africa.
yes,
Because there cannot be any commercial activity without having peace, stability, and security. So we have been going in this direction for some years now. Came COVID-19, unfortunately, took more time than one anticipated or expected.
Yes.
But again, it slowed up things, but we are still in the same direction, maybe slower due to the circumstances, but we are going ahead. We have helped as much as we could the African neighbors and African countries through the hard times of COVID-19.
Yes.
And we are still doing that, but we are hopeful that it will not stay long, and we will continue on our path towards a full integration of African countries, and Egypt, of course, plays a leading role in this domain.
Yes. Mr. Ghaffar, actually the latest data show that the Egyptian exports to Africa are to double over the coming 4 years if all the AFCFTA stages are fully rolled out. How do you see the pace of implementing the deal from your point of view?
Well, I mean, I should say reasonable, because doubling is an ambitious goal.
Yes.
But I personally think that Egypt has the capacity to exceed, not only double, but to exceed.
Yes.
So we hope that we can double and triple, but I think that double is a reasonable figure, conservative, but we have, as I said, all the tools to make it more. And I think it will. Once everything gets back to normal, hopefully soon, we will continue, and I think that our trade will maybe triple or quadruple over the next very few years.
Yes, I hope so. Mr. Ghaffar, what actually challenges face the AFCFTA? African trade represents only 3% of the global trade, while the trade within Africa only accounts for 8% of the total African trade with external markets. What are the reasons for such small percentages from your point of view, Mr. Ghaffar?
Well, I mean, the foreign countries, outside Africa, had their presence in most of the African countries for long time, and of course, most of the trade is linked to these countries. But under the new umbrella of the hopefully African Union, things are changing. The exploitation of the resources in Africa, this is my opinion, can be done with expertise existing in the continent. So integration can be much better within Africa itself. That's why the number, in my opinion, will change. And the 3% will grow very high, and probably the 8% with the foreign world will diminish. And this is the normal and natural evolution of the matters.
Yes. Mr. Ghaffar, how can the African trade with the external markets be increased from your point of view?
The African with the external, I mean, Africa, as I said, has a lot of resources. Unfortunately, until very, very recently, these resources, maybe as far as raw materials are concerned, or as far as metal, any raw material or any resource was exported raw to the foreign countries. But now, with some more know-how, value added can be done over such resources, and products can be sold either semi-finished or finished, which will give the possibility to increase the amount of trade to Europe. And mind you, whether that technology comes from foreign countries or from African itself, countries themselves, won't matter, because again, we have to add value to the products we are exporting so that they can be exported at a much higher price.
Yes, Mr. Raouf Ghaffar, our economic expert. Always a pleasure to listen to your precious input, sir. Thank you very much and have a very good day. And with that, our dear viewers, we come to the end of this edition of Africa Today. Many thanks for watching.